Chapter 1. The Night. They came for her. The village had rejected Isolde Thorn 3 days after her mother's death, and she had learned to live in the spaces between their hatred and their fear. She knelt in the dirt behind the stone chapel, her fingers blackened from soil and ash, when the first shadow fell across her face. The moon was a pale sickle overhead, barely enough light to distinguish the 3 figures that materialized from the forest edge. They wore no colors, no crests, only darkness that seemed to breathe. Isolde Thorn? The voice was soft, a woman's, but it carried the weight of inevitability. She looked up slowly, her heart a steady drumbeat of resignation. After 22 years of whispers and turned backs, after being blamed for her mother's madness and her father's disappearance, she had stopped fearing what might come for her. The villagers said she was cursed. Perhaps they were right. Yes. The woman stepped closer, and Isolde saw her face, beautiful in a way that hurt to look at, ageless and cold. You will come with us. Why? Isolde's voice did not shake. She had no one to protect her, no reason to pretend courage she didn't feel, only exhaustion. Questions are not permitted. A man's voice now from her left. He moved with inhuman grace, his hand already reaching for her arm. She pulled back instinctively. I've done nothing wrong. That is irrelevant. The woman's eyes flashed, catching the moonlight like a predator's. You belong to the king, though you do not yet know it. And there are others who would claim you first. The words made no sense. Isolde opened her mouth to protest, but the third figure, a tall, silent man with silver at his temples, moved behind her with impossible speed. She felt cold fingers at the base of her neck, a pressure point that sent darkness exploding across her vision. The last thing she heard was the woman's voice, distant and hollow. Take her to the sanctuary. He will know what she is when he sees her. When consciousness returned, it came in fragments. Stone walls, torchlight. The smell of old incense and something else. Iron and earth, like blood mixed with rain. Isolde lay on a narrow bed draped in black velvet, her wrists unbound, but her body aching as though she had been carried a great distance. The room was circular, carved from dark granite, with a single arched window that showed nothing but night sky. No stars, no moon, just endless black. She sat up slowly, her head swimming, and noticed the gown they had dressed her in. White linen, simple but finely made, nothing like the rough wool she had worn in the village. It felt like a shroud. The door opened without sound. The woman from the forest entered first, followed by the silver-haired man. They regarded her with clinical interest, as if she were an artifact to be catalogued. She does not look like much, the man said quietly. Neither did the last one, the woman replied. But the bloodline does not lie. Isolde's throat tightened. What bloodline? I'm no one. My family. Your family, the woman interrupted, carried a secret your mother took to her pyre. You are descended from the Morwen line, one of the 3 founding houses of the Covenant. Your blood calls to him, whether you understand it or not. Calls to who? The woman smiled, and it was not kind. The Vampire King, Draven Noctis, Lord of the Eternal Court. You are his fated mate, chosen by blood and prophecy centuries before you were born. The words struck her like a physical blow. Isolde shook her head, stumbling back against the bed. That's impossible. I'm human. I don't even believe in... Belief is irrelevant. The silver-haired man stepped forward, his eyes pale as winter frost. You were marked at birth. The scars on your wrist. Do you think they came from childhood accidents? Isolde looked down instinctively at the 3 faint lines on her left wrist, marks she had carried as long as she could remember. Her mother had always dismissed them, had forbidden her from asking. The king does not yet know you exist, the woman continued. His enemies do. That is why we took you, not as prisoners, but as protection. There are covens who would use you to destroy him, to break the covenant. You are a weapon, girl, whether you wish to be or not." Isolde's hands trembled, but she forced herself to meet the woman's gaze. "Then let them have me. I owe your king nothing." The woman's smile faded. "You do not understand. The bond is not a choice. When he wakes, he will feel you. When he sees you, he will know. And if you are taken by his enemies before that happens, they will drain you slowly, use your blood to summon him into a trap. You will die in agony, and he will fall." Silence pressed down like a weight. Isolde's mind raced, searching for logic in madness. But the ache in her wrist pulsed in rhythm with her heartbeat, and somewhere deep in her chest, something she could not name stirred. A recognition, a pull. "When does he wake?" she whispered. "Tomorrow night," the silver-haired man said. "The blood moon rises. He has been in stasis for 300 years, waiting for the signs to align. Your appearance in the prophecy is the final seal." The woman turned toward the door, her movements liquid and unhurried. "Rest while you can, Isolde Thorn. When Draven Noctis opens his eyes, your life as you knew it will end. And you will have to decide whether you are strong enough to stand beside a monster or become one yourself." The door closed. Isolde stood alone in the flickering torchlight, her breath shallow, her pulse a wild rhythm beneath her skin. She touched the scars on her wrist, tracing them slowly, and felt something ancient stir beneath the surface. A whisper, a shadow, a name she had never spoken but somehow knew. Draven. And in the deepest chambers of the sanctuary, far below where mortal feet could tread, a stone sarcophagus began to crack. Chapter 2. The Awakening of the Eternal King. The sanctuary trembled at midnight. Isolde felt it first as a vibration in the stone floor, a low hum that resonated in her bones. She had not slept. How could she? And had spent the hours pacing the circular chamber, testing the door, locked, the window, too high, no ledge, and her own sanity, rapidly fraying. Now the walls themselves seemed to pulse, and the torches along the corridor outside her room flared brighter, their flames turning from orange to deep crimson. The door opened. The woman, whom Isolde had learned was called Seraphine, stood in the threshold, her expression unreadable. "He wakes. You will come. And if I refuse, then you will be carried." Seraphine's tone allowed no negotiation. "The bond does not wait for your consent." Isolde's stomach twisted, but she forced herself forward. Whatever was happening, hiding would not stop it. She had survived the village's cruelty by enduring, not by fighting. Perhaps that skill would serve her now. They descended through corridors of black stone, past tapestries so old their images had faded to ghosts, past windows that showed only endless night. Other figures moved in the shadows, pale, graceful, their eyes glinting with predatory awareness. Vampires, all of them. She was prey walking into a den of wolves. The staircase spiraled down for what felt like miles, the air growing colder, heavier, until Isolde's breath misted before her face. Finally, they emerged into a vast chamber carved from obsidian, its ceiling lost in darkness. At the center stood a raised dais, and upon it, a sarcophagus of black marble veined with silver. The lid was shattered, fragments scattered across the floor. And standing beside it, his back to her, was a figure that made every instinct in Isolde's body scream. He was tall, taller than any man she had known, his shoulders broad beneath a coat of midnight velvet that fell to his knees. His hair was dark as ink, falling past his collar in waves that caught the torchlight. He did not move, did not breathe, yet the air around him seemed to bend, to darken, as though reality itself acknowledged his presence. Seraphine stopped at the edge of the dais and bowed her head. My king, she is here. Slowly, impossibly slowly he turned. Isolde's heart stopped. His face was carved from shadow and moonlight. High cheekbones, a jaw sharp enough to cut, lips pressed into a line that spoke of centuries of restraint. But it was his eyes that destroyed her. Crimson, deep as blood, old as death itself. They fixed on her with an intensity that stripped away every defense she had ever built. He stared at her for a long, endless moment. Then he spoke, and his voice was a low rumble that vibrated through her chest. You. Isolde could not answer, could not move. Draven Noctis descended the dais in 3 strides, his movements predatory and precise, and stopped mere inches from her. She felt the cold radiating from his body, felt the weight of his gaze as it traced her face, her throat, the pulse hammering visibly at her neck. You are the one, he said softly, almost to himself. The Morwen bloodline. After 3 centuries, the prophecy delivers you. I don't understand, Isolde whispered, hating how small her voice sounded. I'm no one. I don't belong here. His eyes narrowed. You bear the marks. You carry the scent of the old magic. Whether you understand or not is irrelevant. Your blood has already chosen. He lifted one hand, pale and elegant, and before she could flinch, his fingers brushed the scars on her wrist. The moment his skin touched hers, fire exploded through her veins. Not pain. Something else. Recognition. Completion. A sensation so overwhelming she gasped aloud. Draven's expression darkened, and he withdrew his hand as though burned. The bond is active, stronger than I expected. Seraphine stepped forward, her voice cautious. My king, the covens are already moving. They know she exists. We intercepted a hunting party from the Voral clan 2 nights ago. If we had not taken her... I am aware. His tone was steel. How long have you known of her? 3 weeks. We tracked the bloodline through the village records after the Morwen seal appeared in the prophecy chamber. Draven's jaw tightened. 3 weeks, and you did not summon me sooner. The blood moon was not yet... Do not lecture me on celestial timing, Seraphine. His voice dropped to a lethal quiet. I have waited 300 years in darkness. You will not make decisions about my mate without my knowledge. Mate. The word echoed in Isolde's mind, alien and terrifying. She found her voice, shaky but defiant. I am not your mate. I don't even know you. Draven turned back to her, and something flickered in his eyes. Amusement, perhaps, or pity. The bond does not require your affection, Isolde Thorn. It requires only your blood and your survival. You are bound to me by forces older than kingdoms, deeper than choice. Whether you accept it or fight it, the result is the same. Then why not just let your enemies take me? She shot back, anger flaring through her fear. If I'm only a prophecy, a bloodline. He moved so fast she didn't see it. One moment he stood 3 feet away. The next his hand was at her throat. Not squeezing, not hurting, but holding her in place with effortless strength. His face was inches from hers, his breath cold against her lips. Because you are mine, he said, each word deliberate, and I do not surrender what belongs to me, not to covens, not to prophecy, not to fate itself. Isolde's pulse raced beneath his palm. She should have been terrified. She was terrified. But beneath the fear, something else stirred. A dark, irrational pull toward the monster holding her captive. He released her suddenly, stepping back, his expression shuddering. Seraphine, double the guard. No one enters or leaves the sanctuary without my explicit command. I will not lose her before I understand what she is. Yes, my king. Draven looked at Isolde one last time, his eyes unreadable. You will stay in the North Tower. You will be protected, fed, and left unharmed. But do not mistake this for freedom. You are here because you must be. And when the covens come, and they will come, you will see exactly what it means to be the Vampire King's chosen." He turned and strode toward the far archway, his coat billowing like wings. Isolde stood trembling, her wrist burning where he had touched her, her throat still tingling from the ghost of his hand. And deep in her chest, beneath fear and confusion, a single truth whispered. He was right. Something in her had already chosen. Chapter 3. The North Tower's Prisoner. The North Tower was a cage dressed in silk. Isolde stood at the window, her hands pressed against the cold glass, and stared out at a landscape that defied understanding. There were no villages, no roads, only endless forest beneath a sky that never brightened beyond twilight. The moon hung perpetually swollen and red, casting the world in shades of crimson and shadow. She had been here 2 days, though time felt slippery, unreliable. Servants came and went. Silent, pale creatures who brought food she could barely eat and gowns she did not ask for. They would not speak to her, would not meet her eyes. She was a relic to be maintained, nothing more. Draven had not returned. She told herself she was relieved. Told herself the ache in her wrist, the strange, persistent pull toward the lower chambers, was only her imagination. But at night, when the sanctuary grew quiet, she felt him. A presence at the edge of her awareness, dark and vast, watching from some distant corner of this ancient place. The bond, Seraphine had called it. A tether she could not see, but could no longer deny. A knock at the door startled her from her thoughts. "Enter," she said, her voice hoarse from disuse. The silver-haired man from the forest stepped inside. He moved with the same eerie grace as the others, but there was something less predatory in his bearing, something almost kind. "I am Ambrose," he said quietly, inclining his head. "The king's seneschal. I have come to answer the questions you must have." Isolde turned from the window, wrapping her arms around herself. "Will he let me leave?" "No." The answer was not cruel, only honest. Ambrose gestured to the chairs near the fireplace, and after a moment's hesitation, Isolde sat. He settled across from her, his pale eyes thoughtful. "You wish to understand why you are here, why you, among all the humans in the world, were chosen." "I wish to understand why I cannot choose for myself," she said bitterly. "Because some destinies are written in blood long before we are born." Ambrose leaned forward slightly. The Morrowind line was one of 3 human families bound to the original vampire lords during the Covenant Wars. Your ancestors gave their blood willingly to seal a peace that has lasted 1,000 years. In exchange, each generation of Morrowind women carries a mark, a bond that lies dormant until the Vampire King needs it. And Draven needs it now? He needs you. Ambrose's gaze did not waver. The covens are fracturing. There are those who believe the old laws no longer serve them, who would see the covenant broken and the world return to chaos. The Voral clan, the Ashen Court, they gather strength. A king without a mate is seen as weak, unanchored. You are not merely a partner, Isolde, you are proof of his legitimacy, his connection to the old magic. Isolde's hands clenched in her lap. "So I'm a symbol, a political tool?" "You are a woman with power you do not yet understand," Ambrose said gently. "The bond is not one-sided. It gives as much as it takes. When it is fully awakened, you will feel his strength, his centuries of knowledge. And he will feel your humanity, your mortality, the very thing that makes him vulnerable." She looked up sharply. "Vulnerable? He's a vampire king. How could I possibly—" "Because he can be hurt through you." Ambrose's voice dropped. "If you suffer, he will feel it. If you die, the bond will shatter him in ways even immortality cannot heal. That is why his enemies hunt you. That is why he will never let you go." The weight of it settled over her like a shroud. "I didn't ask for this," she whispered. "No." Ambrose agreed. But perhaps you survived your village's cruelty for a reason. Perhaps you endured because you were meant for something greater than their hatred. He rose, moving toward the door. The king wishes to see you tonight. In the Hall of Echoes. A servant will come for you at moonrise. What if I refuse? Ambrose paused, glancing back. Then he will come to you? And I suspect you would prefer to meet him on neutral ground. The door closed softly behind him. Isolde sat alone, her mind spinning. She thought of her mother, burned as a madwoman, her father, vanished into the forest and never seen again, the villagers who spat at her shadow and called her cursed. Maybe Ambrose was right. Maybe she had endured because something in her blood had been waiting. But that didn't mean she had to surrender. Moonrise came too quickly. The servant, a young woman with eyes like bruised plums, led Isolde through corridors she had not yet seen, down into the heart of the sanctuary. The Hall of Echoes was aptly named. Every footstep reverberated against the vaulted ceiling, every breath amplified into a whisper of sound. At the far end, beneath an arch of bone-white stone, Draven stood with his back to her. He wore black, always black, his coat tailored to emphasize the lethal power in his frame. His hands were clasped behind him, and he did not turn as she approached. "You may leave us," he said, and the servant fled without a word. Isolde stopped 10 paces away, her heart a wild thing in her chest. "Why did you summon me?" she asked. "Because I would know you." He turned slowly, his crimson eyes locking onto hers. "Not as a prophecy, not as a bloodline, but as the woman who will stand at my side for eternity, or die trying." She lifted her chin. "I will not be kept like a prisoner." "You are not a prisoner. You are protected." "What's the difference?" A flicker of something, amusement, frustration, crossed his face. "One keeps you alive. The other kills you slowly." He stepped closer, and Isolde fought the urge to retreat. "You fear me. Shouldn't I?" "Yes." His voice was soft, almost regretful. "But fear is not all you feel." Her breath caught. He was right. Curse him, he was right. "I feel trapped," she whispered. "Then we have something in common." Draven stopped just beyond arm's reach, his gaze heavy with centuries of weariness. "I have been trapped in prophecy, in duty, in this endless existence, for longer than your bloodline has drawn breath. You think I wanted this? To wake and find my freedom bound to a human girl who despises me?" "I don't," she began, then stopped. Because she didn't know what she felt anymore. He watched her, silent and unmoving, and she saw it then. The loneliness carved into every line of his immortal face. "I will teach you what you are," he said finally. "And you will decide if you can bear it." Chapter 4: Blood and Memory. The lessons began the next evening. Draven led Isolde to a chamber deep within the sanctuary's heart, a room lined with mirrors that reflected nothing. Not her, not him. Only the empty space where they stood. Candles burned in iron sconces, their flames motionless as if frozen in time. "Sit," he commanded, gesturing to a velvet chair in the center. She obeyed, though her instinct was to run. He circled her slowly, his movements deliberate, assessing. "The Morwen bloodline carries a gift," he said. "Blood memory. Your ancestors could read the past through touch, could see the truth hidden in a single drop of blood. That power sleeps in you, dormant until awakened." Isolde frowned. "I've never seen anything like that. Because you were never taught. Your mother suppressed it, likely to protect you." He stopped before her, his gaze intense. "But suppression only delays. The gift will surface whether you wish it or not. Better to learn control now, before it consumes you." "And you're going to teach me?" "I am the only one who can." He extended his hand, palm up. "The bond between us is a bridge. Through it, you can access power you were never meant to wield alone, but it requires trust. She stared at his hand, pale, elegant, deadly. I don't trust you. Then trust your own survival. His tone was flat. The covens will come. When they do, you will need every advantage. This is not a kindness, Isolde. It is necessity. Slowly, reluctantly, she placed her hand in his. The world exploded. Images flooded her mind, centuries of them, cascading like a waterfall. She saw Draven as a mortal man, dark-haired and laughing, standing in a sunlit field. Saw him kneeling before an ancient crone, drinking from a chalice of blood and shadow. Saw his transformation, the agony, the hunger, the endless years of night bleeding into night. She saw his first kill, his 100th, his 1000th. She saw the woman he had loved once, a mortal with golden hair dying in his arms as he wept blood. Enough. Draven's voice cut through the visions, and he wrenched his hand away. Isolde gasped, collapsing forward, her body shaking. Tears streamed down her face. Not her tears, she realized, but echoes of his grief. Centuries of sorrow absorbed through the bond. He knelt before her, his expression carefully blank. You were not supposed to see that much. The connection is stronger than I anticipated. You loved her, Isolde whispered. The woman with golden hair. You loved her, and she died. His jaw tightened. That was 500 years ago. It is irrelevant. It's not. She looked up at him, her vision still blurred. You've been alone all this time. That's why you hate this bond, because you're afraid to lose again. Something dangerous flashed in his eyes. Do not presume to understand me, girl. You have seen fragments, nothing more. I saw enough. They stared at each other, the silence charged with unspoken truths. Finally, Draven stood, turning away. The lesson is over. Rest. Tomorrow we continue. Wait. Isolde rose unsteadily. If I saw your memories, does that mean you saw mine? He paused at the door, his back to her. Yes. Then you know. About the village. About what they did. I know. His voice was quiet, almost gentle. And I know you survived it with more strength than most immortals possess. That is why the bond chose you, Isolde. Not because you are weak. Because you are not. He left before she could respond. Isolde stood alone among the silent mirrors, her hand still tingling from his touch, and realized with creeping certainty that everything she thought she knew about monsters was wrong. The dreams came that night. She walked through a forest of bone-white trees, their branches hung with crimson flowers that wept blood. In the distance, she heard a voice calling her name. Not Isolde, but something older. A name she had never heard yet recognized in her marrow. Morwenna. She followed the voice deeper into the forest until she reached a clearing where a woman stood. She was tall, regal, with hair like midnight and eyes that burned silver. She wore robes of ancient cut, embroidered with symbols that hurt to look at. You are the last, the woman said, the last daughter of the blood. Do you understand what that means? No, Isolde whispered. It means the covenant lives or dies with you. It means you carry the weight of 1,000 years in your veins. And it means that when the time comes, you must choose. Break the cycle or bind it forever. I don't understand. You will. The woman stepped forward, and Isolde saw that her feet did not touch the ground. He will ask you to complete the bond. To drink from him as he drinks from you, to seal what was begun centuries ago. If you refuse, the covens will tear this world apart. If you accept, you will cease to be fully human. There is no path that does not demand sacrifice, child. Only the choice of which price you are willing to pay. The forest began to dissolve, the trees crumbling to ash. Wait! Isolde reached for the woman, but her hand passed through shadow. Who are you? I am the first Morwenna, The one who made the covenant. And I am sorry, daughter. So very sorry for what we have done to you. Isolde woke gasping, her sheets tangled around her legs, the taste of blood on her tongue, though she had bitten nothing. She stumbled to the window, pressing her forehead against the cold glass, and saw him. Draven stood in the courtyard below, his face tilted toward her tower, his eyes glowing in the darkness. He did not move, did not call out, just watched, as if he could feel her distress across the distance. And she realized, with a shiver that was not entirely fear, that he probably could. The bond was tightening, and she was running out of time to decide what she would become. Chapter 5: The Voral Incursion. The attack came 3 nights later, swift and silent as a blade in the dark. Isolde woke to the sound of shattering glass and Seraphine's voice, sharp with urgency. "Get up! Now!" She stumbled from the bed, her heart hammering, as Seraphine thrust a dark cloak into her arms. "Put this on. Do not speak. Do not run unless I tell you." "What's happening?" "The Voral clan. They've breached the outer wards." Seraphine's eyes flashed with barely contained rage. "They're coming for you." Terror flooded Isolde's veins, but she forced herself to move, fastening the cloak with shaking hands. Seraphine grabbed her wrist and pulled her into the corridor, where chaos reigned. Vampires clashed in blurs of motion, Draven's guards against intruders clad in gray leather, their faces marked with ash. Blood sprayed across ancient stone, screams echoed, inhuman and terrible. "Stay close," Seraphine hissed, dragging her toward a hidden staircase. They descended into darkness, the sounds of battle fading above. Isolde's breath came in ragged gasps, her mind spinning. How had they gotten in? The sanctuary was supposed to be impregnable. They emerged into a narrow corridor lit by a single torch. Seraphine pushed her against the wall, listening. Footsteps. Coming closer. "Run," Seraphine whispered. "To the king's chamber. He will protect you." "Where?" "Go." Seraphine shoved her forward and turned to face the corridor, her fangs extending, her body coiling for violence. Isolde ran. She didn't know the way, only followed the pull in her chest, the bond, tugging her toward him like a compass pointing north. Through twisting passages, past rooms she had never seen, until she burst through a heavy door and stumbled into a vast chamber dominated by a bed draped in black silk. Draven's chamber. He stood at the far end, buckling a sword belt, his expression murderous. When he saw her, something shifted. Relief, fury, possessiveness all at once. "You should not be here," he said, crossing to her in 3 strides. "They attacked. Seraphine said to find you." She was right. He gripped her shoulders, his eyes searching her face. "Are you hurt?" "No, but..." The door exploded inward. 3 Voral vampires poured through, their eyes wild with bloodlust. The leader, a woman with a scarred face and white hair, smiled when she saw Isolde. "There she is, the little Morwen bitch." Draven moved in front of Isolde so fast she barely saw it, his body a wall between her and the intruders. "You dare enter my domain, Katya?" "Your domain is dead, old king." Katya's smile widened. "The covens have voted. The covenant is finished. And we'll start by bleeding your precious mate dry. Try." The word was barely a whisper, but it carried the weight of centuries. Katya lunged. What followed was violence beyond Isolde's comprehension. Draven fought with terrifying efficiency, no wasted movement, no hesitation. He tore through the first attacker in seconds, his bare hands ripping flesh and bone as if they were paper. The second fell beneath a strike so fast Isolde didn't see the blow, only the body crumpling. But Katya was older, stronger. She matched him, her claws raking across his chest, drawing black blood. They collided again and again, a blur of fang and fury. And then Katya broke away, fainting left before diving toward Isolde. Time slowed. Isolde saw the claws extended, saw the hunger in Katya's eyes, and knew she was too slow, too human, too helpless. Draven appeared between them, catching Katya's arm mid-strike. His other hand closed around her throat. "You should have stayed in your hole," he said softly. Then he crushed her windpipe. Katya's body convulsed once, twice, and went still. Draven dropped her like refuse, turning immediately to Isolde. "Are you hurt?" His voice was rough, urgent. She shook her head, unable to speak. He pulled her against him, his arms a cage of cold and strength, and she felt his heartbeat, slow, so slow compared to hers, but steady, real. "I will kill them all," he murmured into her hair, "every last one who dares threaten you." "Draven!" "No." He pulled back, his eyes blazing. "You do not understand. The bond is incomplete, but it is enough. Enough that I feel your fear like my own, your pain like fire in my veins. I have lived 3 centuries without feeling anything, Isolde, and now I cannot escape it. So do not ask me to show mercy. There is none left in me." She stared up at him, at the blood streaking his face, at the ancient weariness behind his rage, and understood. He was not protecting a symbol. He was protecting her, and it was destroying him. "Then complete it," she whispered. He went very still. "What?" "The bond. Complete it." Her voice shook, but she held his gaze. "You said it would make me stronger. That I could defend myself. I'm tired of being helpless, Draven. Tired of being prey. If this is my fate, then I choose it. On my terms. You don't know what you're asking. I know enough." She lifted her wrist, where the scars gleamed faint in the candlelight. "The woman in my dream, the first Morwenna, said I had to choose. So I'm choosing. Bind the bond. Make me strong enough to survive this." Draven's expression warred between hope and horror. "If I do this, there is no going back. You will be bound to me in ways that transcend mortality. You will feel what I feel. Live as long as I live. You will be neither human nor vampire, but something in between. Better that than dead?" He searched her face for a long moment, then slowly, reverently, took her wrist in his hand. "You are certain?" "Yes." "Then so be it." He brought her wrist to his lips, his eyes never leaving hers. "But know this, Isolde Thorn, once I taste your blood, once the bond is sealed, you are mine, and I do not share." "I wouldn't expect you to," she breathed. His fangs pierced her skin, and the world caught fire. Chapter 6. The Covenant Sealed. The pain was exquisite, not agony, something else, a burning that spread from her wrist through her veins, igniting every nerve, every cell. Isolde gasped, her knees buckling, but Draven held her upright, his mouth sealed over the wound, drinking. She felt him, truly felt him, for the first time. The vast coldness of his existence, the weight of centuries, the hunger that never fully slept. But beneath it, something else. Loneliness so profound it had calcified into armor. Grief worn like a second skin, and now, threading through it all, a thin golden strand of warmth. Her. He released her wrist, his eyes molten, and bit into his own wrist with savage efficiency. Black blood welled, shimmering in the candlelight. "Drink," he commanded, pressing the wound to her lips. Isolde hesitated only a heartbeat before obeying. The taste was nothing like she expected, not copper, not rot. It was dark wine and midnight rain, ancient forests and forbidden things. It slid down her throat like liquid shadow, and she felt it spreading, changing, remaking. Her vision sharpened. The candlelight became unbearably bright. She could hear the blood moving through Draven's veins, could smell the fierce sweat of the dead Voral vampires across the room. And she could feel him. Not just his presence, but his self. The fierce protectiveness, the iron control, the desire he fought so hard to suppress. He pulled his wrist away, and she swayed, overwhelmed. "It is done," he said quietly, catching her. "The bond is complete." Isolde looked up at him, and for the first time, saw past the monster to the man. Saw the boy he had been, the mortal who had chosen darkness to protect something he loved. Saw the king who had borne the weight of an empire alone for 300 years. "I see you," she whispered. His expression cracked just for a moment, raw and unguarded. Then he mastered himself, the walls slamming back into place. "And I see you, Isolde Morwen Thorn, last daughter of the blood, my mate, my damnation." He lifted her into his arms as if she weighed nothing and carried her to the bed, laying her down with unexpected gentleness. "Rest. The transformation will take hours. I will guard you." "Don't leave," she heard herself say. He paused, surprise flickering across his face. Then, slowly, he sat on the edge of the bed, his hand covering hers. "I will not leave," he said. "Not tonight. Not ever again." Isolde's eyes drifted closed, her body surrendering to the change burning through her blood. And the last thing she felt before darkness claimed her was the cool press of his lips against her forehead, a gesture so tender it broke something in her chest. She woke to silence and starlight. Her body felt different, stronger, lighter, as if gravity had loosened its hold. She sat up slowly, and Draven was there, standing by the window, his back to her. "How long?" she asked, her voice clearer than before. 6 hours. He didn't turn. "The sun has set again. Your transformation is complete." Isolde looked down at her hands. They looked the same, but when she flexed her fingers, she felt power humming beneath the skin. "What am I now?" "A Dhampir. Half mortal, half vampire. You will age slowly, live for centuries. You will be stronger, faster, more resilient than any human. But you will never be fully one of us." He finally turned, his gaze intense. "You will walk in daylight, which I cannot. You will bear children, which I cannot. And you will die, eventually, which I will not." The last words were heavy with unspoken grief. "But until then," Isolde said softly, "we have time." "Time." He laughed bitterly. "Time is all I have ever had, and it has brought me nothing but loss." She rose, crossing to him on unsteady legs, and placed her hand over his heart. Through the bond, she felt the truth he would not speak, the terror that he had bound himself to someone he would inevitably lose. "Then we make it mean something," she said. "However long we have." Draven looked down at her, his crimson eyes searching hers, and something in his expression gentled. "You are extraordinary. Do you know that? I have seen empires rise and fall, witnessed wonders and horrors beyond count. And yet you, a village girl who should have broken under the weight of this destiny, stand here and offer me hope. Maybe that's why the bond chose me." She smiled faintly. "Someone had to be stubborn enough to choose you back." A ghost of a smile touched his lips, the first she had ever seen. It transformed his face, made him look almost mortal. Then the door burst open, and Ambrose stumbled in, blood streaking his silver hair. "My king. Forgive the intrusion. The Voral clan has retreated, but they've sent a message, a challenge." Draven's expression hardened instantly. "Speak." "They demand a trial by covenant law. They claim the bond is false, that the prophecy was manufactured. They've called for a gathering of the covens to judge its legitimacy." Isolde felt Draven's fury through the bond, a cold, terrible thing. "When?" 3 nights hence, at the Obsidian Court." Ambrose glanced at Isolde, his expression apologetic. They will test her. If she fails, they will declare the bond void and demand her execution. They will try, Draven said flatly, and I will paint the court with their blood. My king, if you defy covenant law, then I will burn the covenant to ash. He turned to Isolde, his eyes burning. You do not have to do this. I can hide you, protect you. No. Isolde's voice was steady. If they want proof, they'll get it. I'm not hiding anymore. Draven stared at her for a long moment, then nodded slowly. Then we prepare for war. Because if they touch you, Isolde, there will be no mercy, no law, only blood. He pulled her close, his arms iron around her, and she felt the promise in his embrace. I will destroy worlds for you, and she believed him. Chapter 7. The Obsidian Court. The Obsidian Court was a cathedral of darkness. It rose from the earth like a black crown, its spires reaching toward a starless sky, its walls carved from volcanic glass that reflected nothing. As Isolde descended from the carriage, flanked by Draven and his guard, she felt the weight of 1,000 eyes upon her. The covens had gathered. Vampires from every corner of the realm stood in the vast courtyard, some in ancient armor, others in modern dress, all radiating power and menace. They watched her with open hostility, their whispers hissing like serpents. Mortal, pretender, the king's whore. Draven's hand tightened on hers, his fury a living thing in the bond, but he said nothing, only led her forward with regal composure. The court's interior was even more imposing, a circular chamber ringed with thrones of black stone, each occupied by a coven leader. At the center stood a dais of polished obsidian, and upon it, a throne larger than the rest. Empty. Draven's throne. An ancient vampire rose from the nearest seat, male, skeletal thin, with eyes like chips of ice. Draven Noctis, you stand accused of fabricating a blood bond to maintain your claim to the covenant. How do you answer? I answer that you are a fool, Malachar, if you believe I would invent something as inconvenient as a fated mate. Draven's voice echoed through the chamber, cold and absolute. The bond is real. The prophecy is fulfilled. This gathering is a waste of immortal time. Malachar's lips curled. Then you will not object to proving it. Let the girl undergo the trial of blood. If she survives, we will acknowledge the bond. If she fails... He smiled, showing fangs. Then she is merely human, and you are a liar. Isolde felt ice flood her veins. What trial? A woman stepped forward, beautiful and terrible, with hair like spilled ink. The trial of blood tests the strength of your bond. You will be cut, poisoned, and broken. If the bond is true, his power will sustain you. If it is false, you will die screaming. Draven moved in front of Isolde, his voice lethal. She has just completed the transformation. This is not a trial. It is an execution. Then she is weak, another voice called out. Unworthy. She is mine, Draven snarled, and the temperature in the room plummeted. And if you touch her, I will declare blood vendetta against every coven in this room. Silence fell, heavy and dangerous. Malachar's eyes gleamed. Then you admit the bond is fragile, that she cannot withstand scrutiny. Isolde felt the trap closing. If Draven refused, they would call him weak. If he agreed, she might die. There was no winning, unless she took the choice from them. She stepped around Draven, ignoring his growl of protest, and faced the assembled covens. I will take your trial. Isolde, no. I will take it, she said louder, her voice ringing through the chamber. Because I am not afraid of you. I was rejected by humans who feared what they didn't understand, kidnapped by vampires who thought I was a tool, and bound to a king who believed he was incapable of feeling. I have survived everything you could imagine and worse, so bring your trial, test me, and when I survive, you will kneel. Silence. Then slowly, Malachar began to clap. Such fire. Very well, little Dhampir. Let us see if your courage lasts. They brought her to the center of the dais and bound her wrists with silver chains that burned her skin. Draven stood at the edge, his body coiled with barely restrained violence, Seraphine and Ambrose flanking him. Through the bond, she felt his terror, his rage, his helplessness. I am here, she sent to him silently, testing the connection. I can feel you. I'm not alone. His eyes locked on hers and she saw the anguish there. Malachar approached with a ceremonial blade, its edge stained black. The first test. Venom. He drew the blade across her palm and liquid fire poured into the wound. Isolde screamed. It was agony, pure, white-hot agony that raced up her arm and into her chest. She felt her heart stutter, felt her vision dim. Then, through the bond, strength poured in. Draven's strength, cold and ancient and infinite. It wrapped around the poison, smothering it, devouring it. Her heart steadied. Her vision cleared. Malachar's eyes narrowed. Interesting. The second test. Severance. He gestured, and another vampire stepped forward, chanting in a language older than stone. The bond screamed. It felt like being torn apart from the inside, like Draven was being ripped away from her soul. Isolde collapsed to her knees, gasping, clutching at her chest. No. No, don't leave me. I am here. Draven's voice in her mind fierce and unyielding. I will always be here. Hold on to me, Isolde. Hold on. She clung to the bond with everything she had, refusing to let go, and slowly, agonizingly, the chant faltered. The vampire performing it stumbled back, blood trickling from his nose. She resists the severance, someone whispered. The bond is stronger than the ritual. Malachar's expression darkened. The final test then, blood loss. He raised the blade. No! Draven lunged forward, but Seraphine and Ambrose held him back, their faces twisted with grief. Malachar plunged the blade into Isolde's shoulder. Pain exploded, white and absolute. Blood poured from the wound, too much, too fast. She felt her consciousness slipping, felt the cold creeping in. Draven, she thought weakly. I'm sorry. No. His voice shattered through the bond. You do not leave me. Not now. Not ever. And then she felt it, his life force, pouring into her through the bond. Not just strength, but essence. He was giving her part of himself, sustaining her at the cost of his own power. The wound began to close. Isolde's eyes snapped open, glowing faint crimson. She looked at Malachar, and when she spoke, her voice echoed with two tones, hers and Draven's. We are one. You cannot break what fate has forged. She tore the chains apart with her bare hands. The court erupted in chaos. Chapter 8. The Blood Vow. The chains clattered to the obsidian floor and Isolde stood, blood streaming down her shoulder but her stance unwavering. Around the chamber, the covens rose from their thrones, some in awe, others in fury. Draven crossed the distance in a heartbeat, pulling her against him, his hands framing her face. You reckless, brilliant fool, he breathed. You could have died. But I didn't. She managed a weak smile. The bond held. Because I gave you too much. His eyes searched hers, frantic. You carry part of my essence now. You will feel my hunger, my darkness. Isolde, I know. She placed her hand over his heart. I feel it. And I'm not afraid. A slow clap echoed through the chamber. Malachar descended from his throne, his expression unreadable. A demonstration worthy of legend, the bond is proven beyond doubt. He looked to the assembled covens. Let it be recorded. Isolde Morwen Thorn is the true mate of Draven Noctis, bound by blood and prophecy. The covenant stands. Murmurs rippled through the crowd, some approving, others resentful. But one voice rose above the rest, sharp and venomous. "And what of the price?" A woman emerged from the shadows, tall, regal, with silver hair and eyes like frozen amber. She wore robes of deepest crimson, and power radiated from her like heat from a forge. Draven's entire body went rigid. "Lilith!" "Hello, old friend." Her smile was poison wrapped in silk. "Did you think I would miss this momentous occasion?" The great Draven Noctis, brought low by a mortal girl. "Speak your piece or leave," Draven said, his voice deadly calm. Lilith glided closer, her gaze fixed on Isolde. "I merely wish to remind the court of the ancient law. A blood bond carries a price. The Morwen line agreed to serve the vampire lords. Yes, but in exchange, the lords agreed to protect humanity from our baser natures. That was the covenant." She gestured to the assembled vampires. "Look around, Draven. How many of us have honored that vow? How many have fed on humans without conscience, turned them without consent, treated them as cattle? The covenant is broken not by the bond, but by us." "Then enforce the law," Draven said flatly. "Punish those who transgress." "Oh, I intend to." Lilith's smile widened. "But it begins with you. You have bound yourself to a Dhampir, a creature of two worlds. If the covenant is to survive, you must prove you remember what it means to protect humanity. Not just her, all of them." Isolde felt Draven's dread through the bond, a cold knot tightening. "What are you proposing?" he asked. "A blood vow." Lilith's eyes glittered. "You will swear before the covens to uphold the original covenant, to hunt those who break it, to become humanity's guardian once more, as you were meant to be. Fail, and the bond will be declared void, and your mate will be executed as a traitor to vampire kind." The court erupted. Voices clashed, accusations flew. Isolde stepped forward, her own anger rising. "You would force him to become your enforcer, to hunt his own kind?" "I would force him to remember what he once was," Lilith said coldly. "A king who ruled with justice, not just power. Or has immortality eroded that nobility entirely?" Draven's hand closed around Isolde's, his grip almost painful. Through the bond, she felt him warring with himself, pride, rage, and beneath it, a flicker of something else. Shame. Because Lilith was right. He had become complacent, isolated, more monster than king. "I will take the vow," he said quietly. "Draven, no." "I will take it," he repeated louder. He looked at Malachar. "Prepare the ritual. If the price of keeping her alive is returning to what I should have been, then so be it." Lilith inclined her head. "Wise choice. The ritual will be performed tomorrow at dusk. Until then?" Her gaze slid to Isolde, cold and assessing. "Guard her well, Draven. There are those who would prefer her dead before you make that vow." She swept from the chamber, her crimson robes billowing like blood. They returned to the sanctuary in tense silence. Once inside Draven's chamber, he finally spoke. "You should never have volunteered for that trial." "You would have refused and been called weak," Isolde shot back. "I made the only choice that mattered." "You made a choice that nearly killed you." He whirled on her, his eyes blazing. "Do you understand what it felt like, watching them torture you, feeling your pain through the bond and being unable to stop it?" "Yes," she said softly. "Because I feel your pain now. Every second. The guilt, the fear, the self-loathing. You think you failed, don't you? That you've become the monster they all believe you to be." He flinched as if struck. "But you haven't," she continued, stepping closer. "You protected me. You gave me your own life force to save mine. That's not a monster, Draven. That's a man who loves." "I cannot love," he said hoarsely. "I am incapable." "Liar." She reached up, cupping his face in her hands. "I feel it through the bond. Every desperate, terrified, overwhelming ounce of it. You love me, Draven Noctis, and it scares you more than any army ever could. His composure shattered. He pulled her against him, burying his face in her hair, his body shaking. I cannot lose you, he whispered. Not again. Not ever. Then don't. She held him tighter. Take the vow. Become the king you were meant to be. And I will stand beside you, for as long as fate allows. They stood together in the darkness, two broken creatures bound by blood and choice, and for the first time in centuries, Draven allowed himself to hope. Outside the window, hidden in shadow, Lilith watched them with unreadable eyes. So it begins, she murmured to the night, the old king reborn, and with him, the reckoning. She vanished into mist, leaving only the scent of blood and roses. Chapter 9. The Vow of Crimson. The ritual chamber was older than the sanctuary itself, carved into living rock deep beneath the earth. Ancient symbols covered every surface, glowing faint crimson in the torchlight. The air was thick with power, old and patient and merciless. Isolde stood at the edge of the circle, flanked by Seraphine and Ambrose, while Draven knelt at the center before a stone altar stained black with centuries of blood. The coven leaders ringed them, silent witnesses to what was about to unfold. Lilith stood opposite Isolde, dressed in robes of silver and scarlet, her expression serene. In her hands, she held a chalice of black iron, inscribed with words in a language Isolde did not know. Draven Noctis, Lilith intoned, her voice echoing through the chamber. You stand before the covens to swear the blood vow, as your forebears did 1,000 years past. Do you accept the terms? I do, Draven said, his voice steady. Then speak the words. Draven closed his eyes, and when he opened them, they burned with ancient resolve. I, Draven Noctis, king of the eternal court, keeper of the covenant, swear upon my immortal blood to uphold the law. I will hunt those who prey upon the innocent. I will punish those who break the sacred balance. I will be shield and sword to humanity, as I was meant to be. This I vow, unto death or dissolution. Lilith approached, offering the chalice. Then seal it in blood. Draven extended his hand, and she drew a blade across his palm. His blood, black as midnight, dripped into the chalice, hissing as it touched the liquid within. The symbols on the walls flared brighter, and a low hum filled the air, resonating in Isolde's bones. And you, Isolde Morwen Thorn, Lilith said, turning to her. As his mate, you share this vow. Your life is bound to his, your fate to his duty. Do you accept? Isolde stepped forward without hesitation. I do. Then add your blood to his. Lilith offered the blade, and Isolde drew it across her own palm, watching her blood, still red, still human, mingle with Draven's darkness in the chalice. The moment they touched, the bond between them ignited. She gasped, nearly collapsing as power surged through her. She felt Draven's centuries of strength, his knowledge, his will, all of it flooding into her like a dam breaking. And she felt something else. The weight of the vow, settling over them both like a mantle of iron. They were bound now, not just to each other, but to the covenant itself. Lilith raised the chalice high. It is done. The vow is sealed. Let no vampire defy it without facing the king's wrath. She drank from the chalice, then passed it to Malachar, who drank and passed it on. Each coven leader partook, sealing their acknowledgement of the vow. When the chalice returned to Lilith, she poured the remaining mixture onto the altar. Flames erupted, crimson and gold roaring toward the ceiling, and then vanished, leaving only silence. Draven rose, his expression unreadable, and crossed to Isolde. He took her hand, pressing his forehead to hers. It is done, he murmured. We are bound beyond breaking now. Good, she whispered back. Then they can never take you from me. The celebration, if it could be called that, was subdued. The covens dispersed with wary respect, and Draven's court returned to the sanctuary in silence. Isolde felt the exhaustion settling into her bones. Too many trials, too much blood, too little rest. But when they reached Draven's chamber, she found she could not sleep. She stood at the window, staring out at the eternal twilight, while Draven sat before the fire, his gaze distant. "Do you regret it?" she asked quietly. "Regret what?" "The vow. Being bound to me." He looked up, surprise flickering across his face. "Never. But you sacrificed your freedom. You'll have to hunt your own kind now, enforce laws you've ignored for centuries. Because of me." Draven rose and crossed to her, his movements deliberate. "You are not a burden, Isolde. You are the first thing in 300 years that has made me feel alive. The vow is nothing compared to that." "But—" He silenced her with a kiss. It was the first time he had kissed her, truly kissed her, not a brush of lips but a claiming, desperate and deep. His hands framed her face and she tasted the blood on his lips, the darkness and desire he had restrained for so long. When he pulled back, his eyes were molten. "I have wanted to do that since the moment I saw you in the Hall of Echoes, but I feared I would break you." "I'm stronger than I look," she managed, breathless. "Yes," he agreed, his thumb tracing her jaw. "You are, and that terrifies me more than any vow ever could." He kissed her again, slower this time, reverent, and Isolde felt the bond between them humming, a living thread of gold and shadow, binding them deeper with every touch. "Stay with me tonight," he whispered against her lips. "Not as king and mate, just as Draven and Isolde." "I'm not going anywhere," she promised. They stood together before the fire, wrapped in each other's arms, and for the first time since the world had turned upside down, Isolde felt safe. But in the depths of the sanctuary, in shadows even Draven's light could not reach, something ancient stirred. A voice, dry as dust, whispered through the stone. "The vow is made. The king is bound. Now we can begin." Chains rattled. A door, sealed for 1,000 years, began to crack, and in the darkness, something that should have remained buried forever opened its eyes. Chapter 10. The Shadow Unbound. The attack came at dawn, or what passed for dawn in the perpetual twilight. Isolde woke to the sound of stone cracking, a deep grinding roar that shook the sanctuary to its foundations. She bolted upright, Draven already on his feet, his body coiled for violence. "What is that?" she gasped. Something that should not be possible. His face was pale, his eyes wide with a fear she had never seen before. "The Undercroft is sealed. It has been for a millennium." "What's in the Undercroft?" He didn't answer, only grabbed her arm and pulled her toward the door. "Get to the upper levels. Find Ambrose. Do not come back down no matter what you hear." "Draven, go!" She ran. The corridors were chaos. Vampires racing past, servants screaming, the walls themselves groaning as if the sanctuary were a living thing in agony. Isolde fought against the tide, searching for Ambrose when a figure stepped into her path. Lilith. Her silver hair was wild, her eyes blazing with fury and triumph. "So it begins," she said, her voice carrying over the din. "The old king awakens." "What are you talking about?" Isolde demanded. "You think Draven is the first vampire king?" Lilith laughed, high and brittle. "He is merely the latest, and the one who came before him, the one he imprisoned in the Undercroft, has been waiting for this moment for 1,000 years. Horror flooded Isolde's veins. "You released him." "I merely loosened the seals. The blood vow did the rest." Lilith's smile was terrible. "Every vow has a price, little Dumpier, and Draven just paid it." She vanished into mist, leaving Isolde alone in the trembling corridor. No, not alone. Behind her, the shadows coalesced, and a figure emerged. Tall, wrapped in tattered robes, his face hidden beneath a hood. But she could see his eyes, glowing like embers in the darkness. "The mate," he rasped, his voice like grinding stone. "How fitting. He loved before, you know, and I took her from him, just as I will take you." Isolde turned and ran. She didn't think, didn't plan, only fled through the collapsing sanctuary, the ancient vampire's laughter echoing behind her. She burst into the main hall and found Draven standing at the center, surrounded by his guard, facing the entrance to the undercroft. From the darkness beyond, something emerged. He was taller than Draven, broader, with skin like ash and eyes like dying suns. He wore armor of blackened bone, and power radiated from him in waves that made the air shimmer. "Hello, boy," the ancient king said. "Did you miss me?" Draven's expression was stone. "Kale, you should have stayed buried. And you should have stayed weak." Kale smiled, revealing fangs like daggers. "But you made a vow, didn't you? Bound yourself to the covenant, to humanity, to her." His gaze slid to Isolde, and she felt it like ice on her skin. "Such a fragile thing. I wonder how long she'll last." "You will not touch her," Draven said, his voice lethal. "Oh, I won't have to." Kyle gestured lazily, and the shadows behind him surged forward. Vampires, dozens of them, their eyes empty, their movements jerky. Thralls. "Your vow demands you protect humanity. Yes? Then protect them." He raised his hand, and Isolde felt the bond between her and Draven scream. Draven collapsed to one knee, gasping. "The vow binds you," Kyle said, circling him like a predator. "You cannot harm those who do not threaten humans, and my thralls, they will only kill vampires. Your court, your people, while you stand by, helpless, bound by your own righteousness." "No," Isolde breathed. Draven's eyes met hers and she saw the agony there. The vow was a chain, tightening with every second, preventing him from defending his own. Kyle laughed. "This is what you deserve, boy. You imprisoned me for showing the world what we truly are, apex predators, and now your precious covenant will destroy you." The thralls advanced. Isolde felt Draven's desperation through the bond, felt his power straining against the vow's limits. He was paralyzed, unable to act. But she was not. The realization hit her like lightning. The vow bound him, not her. She was Dampier, half human. The covenant did not chain her. She stepped forward, placing herself between Draven and the advancing thralls. "Kale." The ancient king turned, amused. "Yes, little mate? Your thralls threaten the vampire king. That makes them a threat to the covenant, and I am sworn to defend it." Understanding flashed in his eyes. Too late. Isolde pulled on the bond, drawing power from Draven. All of it. Every ounce of his ancient strength, and felt her body transform. Her eyes blazed crimson, her fangs extended, and shadows wreathed her like wings. She moved. The thralls fell before her in a blur of violence, her speed inhuman, her strength catastrophic. She tore through them with precision Draven had taught her through the bond, with ferocity born of her own will to survive. Within seconds, the hall was silent save for her ragged breathing. Kale stared at her, genuine surprise on his ancient face. "Impossible. You're human." "No," Isolde said, her voice echoing with Draven's power. "I'm his mate. And you made a mistake threatening what's mine." She lunged. Kale blocked, their collision sending shockwaves through the hall. They fought with savage intensity, his experience against her fury, his power against her desperate love. And then Draven was there, the vow's hold broken by Kale's direct threat, his hands closing around the ancient king's throat. "You lose," Draven said softly. Together, they drove Kale back toward the Undercroft's entrance. He fought, screamed, clawed, but two bonded souls were stronger than one. At the threshold, Draven met Isolde's eyes. "Seal it. Use the bond. It will answer to you now." She placed her bloodied hands on the stone archway and pushed. Power roared through her, through the bond, through the ancient magic carved into the sanctuary's bones. The entrance collapsed, burying Kale in stone and shadow. Silence fell. Draven pulled her into his arms and they sank to the floor together, trembling. "You saved us," he whispered. "We saved each other," she corrected. And in the ruins of the hall, they held each other as dawn, true dawn, broke for the first time in 1,000 years. Chapter 11. Eternal at last. The sanctuary rebuilt itself slowly, stone by stone, spell by spell. Isolde stood on the balcony of the North Tower, watching the work below. Vampires and humans labored side by side, an arrangement that would have been unthinkable a month ago. But the vow had changed things. Draven had changed things. Or perhaps she had. Footsteps approached, and she didn't need to turn to know who it was. The bond told her everything. His weariness, his quiet contentment, the love he still struggled to name. Draven wrapped his arms around her from behind, resting his chin on her shoulder. "You should be resting. I've rested enough." She leaned back against him. "Besides, I wanted to see the sunrise. You've seen dozens since the seal broke. And I'll never tire of them." She turned in his arms, looking up at him. "Do you regret it? The vow? Everything that's happened?" He was quiet for a long moment, his crimson eyes searching hers. Then, slowly, he smiled. A real smile, warm and unguarded. "I regret nothing, except perhaps that I did not find you sooner." "We had to wait for the prophecy," she teased. "Damn the prophecy." He kissed her forehead. "I would have torn through time itself to find you." Isolde's throat tightened. Even now, after everything, his words could undo her. "The covens have accepted the new terms," he continued, his tone turning businesslike. "Malachar grudgingly, but acceptance nonetheless. Lilith has been exiled for her role in freeing Kyle, and the humans..." He hesitated. "The humans are beginning to trust us again. It will take time, but the covenant is healing." "Because of you," Isolde said firmly. "Because of us." He tipped her chin up. "You are my strength, Isolde. My conscience. My heart, if I still possess such a thing." "You do," she whispered. "I feel it every day." They stood together in the golden light of dawn, and Isolde marveled at the impossibility of it all. She, a rejected village girl, now stood as the vampire king's mate, bound by blood and vowed to a creature who had lived centuries and would live centuries more. But she was not afraid. "What happens now?" she asked. "Now?" Draven's smile turned wicked. "Now I teach you to fight properly. Your technique yesterday was abysmal." She laughed, swatting his chest. "I saved you. And nearly got yourself killed doing it. Unacceptable." His expression sobered. "You are Dumpier, Isolde. You will live for centuries, but you are not invincible. I intend to ensure you survive every one of those years." "Controlling. Devoted," he corrected. He cupped her face in his hands, his touch reverent. "I have lost much in my long existence. I will not lose you. Not to time, not to enemies, not to fate itself. You are mine, and I am yours, for as long as the stars burn." "That's a long time," she managed, her voice thick. "Not long enough." He kissed her then, deep and slow, and she felt the bond between them singing, a thread of gold and shadow, binding them across every lifetime, every breath. When they finally pulled apart, the sun had fully risen, painting the world in shades of amber and rose. Draven took her hand, lacing their fingers together. "Come, the court awaits. We have a kingdom to rebuild. Together, Isolde said. Always. They descended into the sanctuary, where the throne room had been restored to its former glory. The covens had gathered once more, but this time there was no hostility, only cautious respect. Draven took his place on the obsidian throne, and Isolde stood beside him, her own seat carved newly into the stone. Equal. Partner. Ambrose stepped forward, his voice ringing through the hall. Let it be known throughout the realm, the Covenant is reborn. The vampire king and his mate have sworn to uphold the balance, to protect both vampire and human, to enforce the ancient law with justice and mercy. All who serve the court are bound by this vow. All who defy it will face the king's wrath. The assembled vampires knelt, pressing fists to their chests in salute. Draven rose, his presence commanding the room without effort. The age of isolation is over. We will no longer hide in shadow while the world forgets us. We will walk among humanity once more. Not as predators, but as guardians. This is my vow. This is our purpose. He looked down at Isolde, his eyes soft. And this is my mate, who gave me the courage to remember what I was meant to be. Honor her, as you would honor me. The court echoed the vow, and Isolde felt the weight of their acceptance settle over her like a cloak. Seraphine approached, a rare smile on her lips. You did well, little Dampier. Perhaps there is hope for us yet. Perhaps, Isolde agreed. Ambrose bowed low. My queen. The title startled her, but when she looked at Draven, he only nodded. You earned it, he said simply. That night they stood once more on the balcony, the kingdom spread out before them in twilight splendor. Do you think it will last? Isolde asked. The peace? Nothing lasts forever, Draven said, but we will fight for it, every night, every century, together. Together, she echoed. He pulled her close and she rested her head against his chest, listening to the slow, steady beat of his heart. Once, she had been a rejected girl, alone and unloved. Now she was bound to a king, a partner in an eternal covenant. It was not the fate she would have chosen. It was better. I love you, she whispered into the darkness. Draven stilled. Then, softly, reverently, he replied, And I love you, my mate, my salvation, my forever. They stood together as the stars emerged, two souls bound by blood and choice, and the night welcomed them home.